If you haven't and you still can, try and print off the worksheet that I've provided for this webinar. It's got lots of blanks on one side, which is for you to write your own notes. The idea is that you write down what's important to you, what you want to remember, or what you think you'll forget, and then you can highlight it and scribble it. But it means that you are more likely to remember it. In a digital age, we type a lot of things, we text message, but the physical act of writing can really help you remember something. It's a bit like when physically writing out a shopping list and then you forget it and you think, oh, I'm never going to remember everything. Come back and go, wow, I only missed one thing out of the 9 that were on the shopping list. That's not too bad. So that's why I really would like you to print it off and physically write on it. And on the back of it is there some information that I'll refer to as well. So thank you for joining us on the second of a series of 3 webinars. The first one was on developing leadership through speaking. And this is drilling a little bit deeper into meetings. Now, I actually put on the first question, which is probably slid through on Slido, but how long do you spend in meetings each week? Are you productive or are you going through the motions? Meetings are intended to be productive, and that's one aspect that I'm going to cover today. The other aspect is whether you're leading the meeting or just participating in it. And there are a lot of people that are saying they're not participating for various reasons. So I want to just provide you with some different viewpoints. It might be applicable to yourself, or it might be applicable to your staff. And let's face it, if you're all attending a meeting and it's not billable hours to your clients, then it's an expensive 45 to 50, 60 minutes of time, right? So we want to make sure that the meetings are productive, people are participating, prepared and ready. So that's a little bit of the theme today. If you wanted to put in Slido how long you estimate you think you spend in meetings while I do the introduction, I'll just talk a little bit about the objectives as we pull up the share screen, and I hopefully can do that with you. Application window, off we go. So in a second here, this will be coming up. I will be shrinking away and we'll get going. So welcome to the webinar today. I'm adding in online meetings. Obviously, since lockdown, we've all discovered the beauties and also the dangers of online meetings. Now, for the most part, I'll be referring to Zoom, but please fill in the word that you use. I know there's Microsoft Teams and things like that, but for simplicity, I'm just going to talk about online meetings as sort of Zoom meetings. If you wouldn't mind, Skype's probably very similar. The objective of today, though, is to help you and your team and your company have more productive and engaging meetings. It might mean that they are better attended. Your outcomes are definitely going to increase, and maybe you'll even have the chance to maybe speak up when you've been holding back. So I'm employing a standard public speaking skill today of tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. So here's the tell them what you're going to tell them bit. Today we're going to be talking about why meetings are so important and how you can improve your in-person meetings or your participation in them. I'm going to move on to online meetings. We're going to recap a little bit on questions and answers and systems for that. And then I've added in one that I'm pretty passionate about, and I'm sure you wouldn't mind in these challenging times, developing client relationships. Obviously, I'll do my recap. I'll tell you what I told you a little bit and open the floor up via Slido for questions and answers. So please do add in questions and comments in Slido. Jenny will be moderating those, and hopefully towards the very end we will have enough time and you'll be able to stay on the line and look over some of those questions and be involved. So let's get going. This is a little recap for anyone that had attended the last workshop. I'm just going to pull up a slide that I used before because I'm a public speaking coach. I focus on the big group presentations when we're going to do keynotes or we're speaking to large audiences. And speeches are different from presentations. Speeches generally have just you speaking. Presentations involve some kind of props. Traditionally, the good old death by PowerPoint. But I believe, and I firmly recommend, you don't look at public speaking as just these three things. You look at it as when you're speaking in meetings, particularly if it's, say, 5 or more people, when you're networking at events, and when you're even going for a job interview. The parallels that you can pull on for preparing a speech to preparing a job interview or presentation are uncanny. So just on the networking side of things, our third webinar later in September is actually on networking specifically. So we're going to drill really deep about how we can make the most of the in-person events. Now, it's obviously going to be relevant again because we're trying to cram a lot of events into the end of the year. So networking is going to become a really important thing to help develop those contacts, industry relationships, government relationships, of course, and then, of course, client relationships. So I'm going to just recap again a little bit on why meetings are so important and when we would do them. I believe meetings are your public speaking training ground. What I mean is, and particularly if they're internal meetings, these are where you can really just get your daily practice, your daily dose of speaking to a group and still employing some of the important foundations of public speaking, but they're also something that can go horribly wrong. We're doing them all day. My staircase of public speaking encourages people to and shows you this. Start off down on step 1 with just casual small meetings. Move up into the higher steps of doing maybe networking meetings, promotional speeches, client meetings in step 4. Larger and more important meetings, maybe they're involving many different contractors. If you're working on as a team and you've got an architect and maybe some people from the construction side that you're meeting with. And then eventually, as we become leaders in our field, as you become maybe go from middle management to senior executive or something like that, you might be asked to go to public meetings, workshops, present at conferences. So they're all of a similar genre. You can see this as a way of moving through these steps, but that's why I think that meetings can be your training ground for developing skills in many different ways. So why not get really good at them and be the person known to participate or run a really good meeting? I did it a different way where I said, this is where meetings are. They're internal meetings. They're external client meetings. And of course, they're the big external meetings that are more like conferences and networking events. So our lives in business are surrounded with in-person and now also a lot of online meetings. Let's get good at them. It's really worthwhile to learn how to speak up in meetings and also run really productive meetings. You want them to be results driven. You want them to be having decisions made, plans agreed. And sometimes you want them to just strengthen a business relationship. I'm sure many of you, your meetings are around progressing reports, progressing submissions, getting other consultants of a client to do certain things. But there's always a chance to convey your knowledge, prove your competence, gain the trust of the client or gain the trust of the other people involved in the project. And of course, there's always a chance to demonstrate your professionalism. So instead of walking into every meeting going, oh no, here we go, another hour of my life, I can't get back. How about you change it around to, okay, this is a chance for me to be the best I can be, whether I'm just a participant or whether I'm leading. And so here's where you want to have the worksheet in front of you, because there's already one little fill in the gap word here. Meetings are your public speaking, fill in the gap. And then you'll see the icons that are on the screen are on the sheet. And this is where you might get a lot of the ideas that you want to start to implement. I called this slide speaking in meetings, but in fact, this is all stuff that is not about speaking. Number 1, Put away the distractions. These things, the phones, are a great distraction for us. I would love to think that was you all sitting on the other end of this going, well, duh, we know that. We don't do that. But I've heard of many people say, oh, yeah, I mean, I've been in meetings where people are flicking through and they're really not present. And online meetings, it's even worse. But I've also heard, and I'm not going to name names or indicate where I heard this from, a general manager said to me, he was interviewing people for a position, highly sought after position by graduates in particular. And one of the people that he interviewed checked the phone because a text message came through. Now, it was a toss-up between two people. And I think for particularly people that are not millennials, it was pretty obvious who was going to get the job. If you were checking a text message in a job interview, seriously, what hope were you when you were going to be in another weekly meeting? So put away the distractions. Many people say they forget to turn off on the mute button. A good meeting convener will say, please put your phones face down. But the other thing is that if people are coming to a meeting with a laptop, that can also be pinging up messages, and some of them aren't work related. If for some reason you have to take a call, please, I encourage you, say, sorry, everyone, today I'm expecting a client call that I really need to take. Obviously not if you're with another client, or I'm very sorry, my father's quite ill. We're expecting to be called in. So if you wouldn't mind, I'll just have my phone available in case I need to rush out. People understand, but please just be respectful of their time. The next one is that little toolbox or first aid kit is be prepared. The best meetings you're going to have are probably more on the traditional side. Someone's taking minutes, someone's recording action points. But if you're not the person that's actually the minute taker or the person distributing those minutes, just at least go in by checking over the last minutes, checking over that you've done your action points, reporting back, preparing what you need to say, rehearsing it even, knowing the names and the roles of all the people. I've been to loads of meetings where it becomes uncomfortable if people aren't introduced. So make that, to keep some formality in there, know people's names. The old trick was to always grab the business card and then say, oh, would you have a business card? And then put it with the name face up in front of you in the order that they are sitting in. That's one of the best uses and most often uses for business cards these days. And if you've got people that are actually from overseas, maybe learning about how they meet and greet, taking a business card with two hands and things like that. Another great pre-prepared one is just checking the size of the room. Is the AV equipment available? Have you got any apologies on your agenda? Do you need to send apologies? Have you got the correct participants? Here's the next one. The purple one is have an agenda. Even if you're not running the meeting, maybe you writing down an agenda and actually reviewing over it and saying, look, I've got to leave after half an hour. So could I move my bit up the agenda? Oh, agenda. Oh, we hadn't gone around that. Sure. The participant side, should you be there? Do you know about the meeting, the topics? Do you need to be there? How valuable is your time? Should you better spend somewhere else? So list them down, list the apologies, write the agenda out, give the action points, make sure you've done yours. All of these things are often overlooked because a lot of our meetings are very casual. So there might be the chance meeting in the hallway, around the water cooler, in the lunchroom, that not all of this is necessarily going to come into play, but you can think through them as they happen. But if it's one of those, let's catch up for a coffee in a cafe, people put all the other things like agenda action items aside, and those meetings can turn out to be quite unproductive. So bringing some of these small formalities into a cafe coffee catch-up meeting can make them far more worthwhile. So I want to also encourage you to do this, which is active listening. Now, active listening is on the worksheet at the back, if you can see that, right down the bottom hand corner. 3 steps to active listening. Now, active listening is where you don't go, yeah, right, okay, well, my opinion or my experience. It's where you actually put whatever you're thinking about aside and indicate to the person that you are actually listening. And it could be with subtle things like leaning in a little bit, looking at them, nodding, doing little verbal cues like, okay, sure. All of those are saying, I'm listening to you, not I can hear you and I'm just waiting my turn to speak. So prepare yourself to put aside your agenda on what you need to say and engage in some active listening. And if you're the meeting leader, that's even more important. Other things we could add in there are things like starting on time, ending on time, but bringing your energy and enthusiasm. And that is something that I'm really going to encourage with the online meetings as well. Bringing your energy and enthusiasm. I remember head of IT for a company I worked for. And honestly, you thought you were putting thumb screws on him every time he came for the monthly meeting. Everything was more important than the monthly meeting. And that was always the feeling I got with him. I always felt like I was going to be interrupting him, that nothing I had was important because our team meetings that were only monthly always seemed like such a drag. Don't be that person. Right, the next one is about speaking up and actually speaking. I've put a little cloud there that's already up that says, so what? So many times we're going to have someone that's sitting there at the meeting thinking, so what? Now, they might not have it written on their forehead, but there are going to be people, whether you're presenting formally or having a table discussion, that are probably thinking, so what? Get on with it, get to the point. So try and make sure that you're being the efficient person. Next one is what I said before. Let's put away those distractions. Let's just go for the scenario that one person is taking the minutes. The guy with the so what bubble is looking up the information on the online, I don't know, accounting system or something. Everybody else, do they need to be looking at it, or could they put away their phone distraction? Let's get into smile and acknowledge others and use their name. So simple. Indicate that you all want to be there. Indicate that they're important, their time is important. It's just the most simple thing you can do to make other people feel welcome, whether you're leading the meeting or not. Particularly when you're developing client relationships. That's when it's obviously the most important. But if you practice it in your internal meetings, it will become more natural and automatic in your client important meetings. Next one, use open-ended questions. Open-ended questions are really powerful, and they're a really important way to become a better communicator. Again, there will be things like that on the back of your worksheet, so I won't go into them too much detail, but they're called questions that can help you communicate. And they're really good for helping elicit people that are not really participating or maybe holding back. You know, Sarah, what do you think is the best solution? It's not yes or no question. It's what do you think is the best solution? And it forces them to give an opinion or state some facts rather than just saying, I'll go with option A. That's a good idea. So really look at how you can use open-ended questions to pull information out of people. It can also help you guide a discussion, clarify, and it can also help you influence an outcome, such as, do you agree with that being the way we should go forward? Now, that's less of an open-ended question, but by saying, do you agree, it might put some people going, oh, I'm not really sure, but I'll say yes. And then you can move, great, you agree, let's move on. Let's get to the next point. So those can be ways that you can participate and encourage conversation. The next one, refer to what other people said. This is a great tip and trick that I train more advanced presenters in their speeches and their presentations, particularly if it's in a conference. Refer to what other people said. I noticed that John was really adamant about making that point clear, and I actually agree with him. So instead of saying, I agree that that should happen, pull in that person, involve them, show that you've been listening. Really important for the people that are running the meeting. Now, mostly we want to have a friendly atmosphere, starting on time, bring people up to date, stating the purpose of the meeting. If you've been in meetings where you're not really quite sure why you're there, or not really sure what the outcomes were. So if that's not clear to you, perhaps you could start to interject and say, oh, I'm sorry, can I just clarify the purpose and the outcomes that we're seeking to achieve today, just to help get us all focused? So that's another great way of really bringing in people and actually getting really focused, because at the end of it, you can say, so just going back to what the outcomes were today, my action point is X, Y, Z, and John's going to do ABC. Is there anything other action points that I've missed? If you're the person running the meeting, you need to close it. You need to indicate that you're coming to closing time, perhaps review and summarize. Maybe agree those agreements are action points. Have I missed anything? And then try and even squeeze in a thanks for coming, everyone. Look forward to seeing you next week. Great meeting, everybody. Looking forward to next week. Please make sure everything's handed in to me. I'll distribute the minutes. Really, that was a productive meeting. These are really positive ways to involve people and make them feel like A, it was worth their while, and B, that they've achieved something rather than just lost another hour of their lives. If you're also someone that's not participating much, or you've got a team member that isn't, try to start building in opportunities for them to speak up. Now, this is a real passionate area of mine because I work a lot with women that are very knowledgeable and competent, but have got things holding them back for speaking up in meetings. This is particularly happens in the postgraduate years. And so it's something that you might want to just be a little bit more aware of, because there's a real mental shift between going to tertiary education, high school education, and then getting into a workforce where there's no examinations and tests to say to everybody that you're on a level playing field, or in case of many women, you're actually far more competent than that guy. But as he gets out into the workforce, particularly if it's a male-dominated industry, it can be quite overwhelming and it can be quite intimidating. So that woman that was doing really well at university can start to feel a little bit intimidated. So please, if you've got someone on your team like this, encourage them, maybe give them a heads up. Look, I need you really participating more. I'm going to give you the heads up. I'm going to give you a chance to speak. Be ready. Be rehearsed. This is what you need to be inputting on, okay? And I'm going to give you time to say that, but I need you to start getting used to participating in meetings, because sometimes they just need a little bit of encouragement, a little bit of push to say, your opinion's valid. Please partake in it. So I'll get off my hobby horse there, and we're going to move on now to online meetings. One of the things that we've found with online meetings is there's a very different dynamic than when we're sitting around the table, like you can see on the slide there. So I want you to really think about this. This could be familiar to you, although the age group is a little bit higher. This was in a newsletter I received from Toastmasters. Now, the reason I'm just putting a caveat in here, first of all, it's been distributed fairly publicly. Second of all of these people have had correspondence about how to do well in an online meeting. So before I start with some of their Zoom fails, I just wanted to go over some ideas that you could potentially use if you're going to continue doing online meetings post-lockdown. One of them is you need to allow more time. People can really only talk one person at a time. So I've certainly found with the online meetings I've attended, it takes longer because you can't look at someone and go, I'll answer your question next and then we'll go on to you. You have to sort of go, okay, questions. And then everyone goes, should I speak? Okay, I'll speak. So things don't flow. Allow more time. Again, all the previous advice kind of applies in this situation. So be prepared, have an agenda, start on time, finish on time. If you're using Zoom, you might be able to use breakout rooms if that's something that you've got. Okay, I want you to split into two. I'm going to put you into breakout rooms. Here's the thing you need to discuss and come back in 3 minutes time. So maybe that could shake things up a bit. Maybe you could start with some kind of icebreaker in the meeting. Look, I know we've all had months of Zoom meetings. I want to make this a little bit different. So let's start with a question, everybody. Raise your hand like this if you, and in my case, I was on Slido and I said, how much time do you spend in online meetings? Can you tell me? And if you have a small amount of participants and they can add to that, that's great. Get them actually putting things in the question box, in the chat box. Perhaps you could do a show and tell. That was something I just was hearing someone suggesting. Show and tell could be fun. Okay, everyone, this is meeting number 10 at our homes. Let's just start with something different. I want everyone to pick up an object and tell us why it's important to them, or what do they like about it? And that could be something as mundane as the tape dispenser, or it could be something like that, say, bring along something you would never see, your souvenir that you got on holiday. It's just a little bit to change it up a little bit and make things a little bit more fun. So let's look at some Zoom fails. Okay, so number one Zoom fail is the lighting. And it's hard. I've got sunshine coming in on the side of me. I've got sunshine coming in the, in inconvenient places, shall we say. And so have many of these people. Poor lighting and backlit. This guy here looks like the scary guy out of Harry Potter because we can't really see his face and he's got side lighting. This one up to the top left-hand corner, we can only see half his face. This guy's got too much backlighting. Maybe he could move the camera around a bit. Same with her, pull the curtain. He's pulled his blinds, but still hasn't quite got the lighting right. So we're really only seeing half his face. And the guy down the bottom, he's also got some backlit problems and he's quite far away. So he could do with moving towards the camera a little bit. Next one, the wrong angle. Shall I demonstrate the worst angle? How many times have we had to watch people's noses? We've got a couple here. We're looking up his nose. We're looking at his ceiling. Potentially, they're both using laptops and they're not getting online with the camera, which is what we want to do. It's best if we can be eye to eye. And then this lady, it's not flattering. So it's not just vanity, but it's also about, best idea we can have is looking face on to you. Messy backgrounds. Ah, yes, this guy here, right there. I mean, are we in a storage room or where is he taking us? This guy's got an office, lots of folders, very corporate of him. Thank you, Barry, but it's a bit messy. Maybe he could tidy it up a bit. We're in the spare room down here with Max, and James has also got us in. He's got a nice Toastmasters banner, but I'm not sure what he's got on the back of his door. Someone said to me yesterday, yeah, I was doing an online meeting, and to be fair, it was a student, and I got to see her dirty washing, or it might have been her clean washing. I couldn't really tell, but I didn't want to see any of that. So be really careful of that. This guy over here, Tim, he's in his kitchen, so it's not too bad. I am concerned that he might have people walking in any second. So what do people do to get around that? Well, the best thing, on the top there, you can see Chrissy with a black background, and right down the bottom middle, Michael has also got a very plain background. But many people get around the messy background. They think they're doing a nice thing by giving us virtual backgrounds. I've just put that in green. Andrew there. Oh, I just, every time I look at Andrew with his skyscraper background, and also Agnes there, I'm starting to feel a little bit queasy, even though it's looking up at the sky. One lady on one of our meetings thought she would be really nice, I think, and give us the Fiji swirling waves background, which was actually really nice for about a minute. And then it became annoying, not just because we knew none of us could go there potentially all year or enjoy anything like that, but the movement behind her was very distracting. It's very hard on the eyes, and that's why we can't try to keep online meetings to an hour. It's a lot of information for our brains to process looking at a screen like that. So let's move on. What else don't we like? Interruptions and noise. They had it even on the news last night about some of the toddler interruptions. Look, if we're working from home, we can't help that. Child interruptions, even pet interruptions. But do your best to minimize that. And that's why people wear headsets, whether it's, in my case, it's the standard headset that goes with an Apple product, or it's a big headset that goes over your ears like some of the people in these pictures are. It minimizes the surrounding noise, so you can't hear the construction beside me, but it also means that you can hear their voices better. It also means that you won't get feedback, which I had in a Zoom meeting yesterday. Someone was echoing because you didn't have a headset. Another one, poor connection. Please, the best option you can have is to be having a Zoom meeting on your computer that's hardwired into your internet. The next best is obviously by Wi-Fi, but whatever you do, try to avoid having meetings on mobile. Someone accepted a Zoom meeting from me, business meeting, while she was being driven somewhere, and we were cutting in and out, and it was freezing. The picture was freezing. I mean, I don't mind her doing two things at the same time, but eventually I just said, this isn't working. Can we just go for a standard mobile call? She's like, oh yeah, sure. But try and avoid being fully mobile. Next one, mute and blank the screen. So all your systems will have an availability to mute and unmute. Please use it. If you're organizing a Zoom meeting, please have people muted as they come on. Maybe even not having to start the video. This is one of my versions of Zoom when I blanked out the video. I don't know if any of you've seen it. It's quite hilarious, but someone right at the beginning of lockdown didn't understand about muting and stopping the video, that you could stay on the call listening and watching other people, but they can't see you. And she actually took the family Zoom, I believe it was a family Zoom call, to the toilet. And they could all see and watch her in the toilet. Now, I've done that on mobile where I've actually knocked the toilet. The phone was in my pocket and I accidentally unmuted it. But you click on the mute, unmute, start and stop video. But also, if you're the convener of a meeting, maybe it's up to you to say, I want everybody to have the video on, please. I want them to be present. I want them to be listening. I want them to actually be there, not checking emails, doing other things. Be present. So that's another idea that I've got just to help you and improve it. And one of the other ones someone suggested to me is that closing down other apps. So again, that can really affect the quality of your video. But it also can mean that if you've got a system where messages are popping up, that they're not interrupting you. So really have a look at that as well. This is virtual background in Zoom. So I've just done flicked it on and done a screenshot of me. So obviously that's the same sort of background that I've got behind me. And there's the option by going to settings and virtual background where you can choose the virtual background. Now those are just 3 of them that I had up. I had other ones where I picked photos and though, you know, they were quite fun. My virtual background can work quite well because I've got a fairly good flat background behind me. But virtual backgrounds don't work very well if you've got just a big room behind you. They actually need something to calibrate off, and a green screen is actually the best way of putting up a virtual background. It makes it more stable. Another thing that someone else confirmed for me that I had seen as well this week was that for some people, virtual backgrounds work well for people with very flat or trim hair. If you've got curly hair, then you look like you end up having sort of a halo. So be aware of that. Virtual backgrounds are best kept professional if it's a professional meeting. So as I said, not having pictures of Fiji or something that's distracting. Keep them on, excuse me, keep them appropriate. Excuse me, I'll just move on to answering questions. And you can put one in the Slido if you've got any at the moment. Much of meetings are about answering questions and seeking answers from people. With all my people that I help with keynote presentations or speeches, I always tell them, your presentation is one part, but having frequently asked questions prepared and rehearsed is another key skill. So I really encourage you, if you've got some questions that you want asked and answered, have them prepared. If there's content you don't want to put into your presentation at the meeting, prepare for them to be asked. One of the things I also suggest is if you're having a Q&A session at the end of a meeting or at a presentation, you might even want to prepare the first question in case no one asks them. If you, so write out the answers to those frequently asked questions. You know, what is your fee? Are you negotiable on the fee? Is this time frame flexible? Can you get this out earlier? What happens if this occurs? Will you be able to? So figure out what all those questions might be that you might not actually put in the body of anything that you're talking about, but someone might, you know, even pluck up the courage to ask you. And rehearse the answer. Make sure it sounds knowledgeable. Make sure it sounds confident. How can you do that? I hear you say. Structure. This is one of the most useful structures you can have. So I've got 3 ideas for structures. This is one of them. There's another one called STAR that's on your worksheet there. That is actually at the bottom, situation, task, action, results. We'll go over that next. This most simple structure is just give an opening. Thank you very much for that question about, repeat the question so in case people weren't listening, didn't hear it. Rephrase it while you think about the answer. Tell them the answer and then try and close off the question by saying, I think that addresses that question. Next question, potentially. If they put a really big, long problem to you, rephrase the problem. Tell them some possible solutions. And that's when most people finish with, here's the problem, here's the solution. I challenge you to take a step further. Here's the problem, here's the solution. Now I want to cover some benefits of my preferred solution and the action point or the actions that we need to do to solve that problem. Complete, succinct, and very structured, but will be very impressive. So that's what the matrix structure to answering a question is. The next one is about the STAR. Now, STAR is just an acronym for situation. So you'll start off with reviewing the example. It's great for job interviews in particular, I've noted down there, or talking about the past. Oh, well, we had a similar project. It was in the neighborhood near you, and it was 18 months ago. The task, what we did was XYZ. We found that it took these many hours, and the aim of what we had to do was produce a report. And the actions we took were, so A is for action. We gathered the information and then just list down a number of action points, a little bit like you would in the matrix one, and the result. Now, if it's a client or another consultant asking you, you really want to focus on this results part. Reflection. Did you achieve what you set out to in this situation? Did you get all your tasks done? Were you under budget, within the time available? It's a really complete and confident way of telling people about previous work that you've done. So it can be quite powerful. Developing client relationships. In the last 5 or 10 minutes, I want to talk a little bit about this because our clients are like this peonies. We start off getting to know them quite often. And that's why I've included at the back on the reference guide the 4 levels of conversation. Sometimes it takes a long time to get to know a client, and so it takes a long time for them to know, like, and trust you, which is your aim. But if you slowly develop it along and start to get a more personal experience with them, you will develop that client relationship. So going to those icons, I'm going to move on to those now. Get to know them. That's what the little brain there is. Know them really well. If they mention names of wives, children's, dogs, holidays, note it all down if you need to. Refer back to them. How was your holiday? Did you enjoy Russell? I loved it last time. You know, have a bit of that small chat, that getting to know each other stuff that shows that you, next icon, care. Particularly now. Particularly when people's businesses are borderline, some of them are facing challenges. Maybe the client's actually really busy and that's their challenge, but show that you care. I've learned this amazing saying of probably New Zealand's highest paid keynote speaker, Alison Mooney. And so, you know, to me, she's kind of the godmother of this in my industry. But she said, people don't care how much you know until they know you care. We don't want to know from the know-it-all if the know-it-all doesn't care about us. So really take some time to show that you care about them. Next icon, priority. Indicate to them that they're a priority. People love knowing that they're a priority. Not, you're my favorite client and I'll always drop everything for you, but just, I can't make it in the morning, but I really want to make sure that we have this resolved by the close of business today. Would you be able to do it over lunchtime? Could we slot in a Zoom call instead of meeting in person so that we can get through the agenda? You're a priority to me. The active listening comes back again. So remember, we said that earlier in meetings, employ the active listening. And the next one is something that, interestingly, a number of different clients have told me is something that we really need to encourage our younger workers. Call them. Pick up the phone and call them. If you've grown up in a digital age and hidden behind email and text messages, you will be more reluctant to talk to people. And today it's like, oh, they're probably too busy. You know what? They may well not be. And actually, it might be the first phone call they've got from a consultant in a long time. Stand out from the crowd. I'll give you 2 examples. I worked with a planning company. So they're environmental planning consultants. And they said that particularly their younger people, were not calling clients. So they weren't starting to develop an easy rapport over the phone. They were always reluctant. Now, you can always follow up the phone call, and probably should, with a quick email saying, just to confirm the phone call, or I've left a message for you. You can listen to it, or just get straight back to me. I'd love to just talk through this. Show them that you care and they're a priority by elevating them to phone call worthy. The other one is a large agency that I work with, commercial real estate. They said, without doubt, their most successful sales and leasing agents are the ones that are phoning, that are making the phone calls. Just phoning to say hello, phoning to give the client more information, phoning to let them know about something, phoning. Just find a reason, make the phone call. It doesn't have to be long. It can be a couple of minutes, because these touch points, phone calls, coffee meetings, they all develop and move along a client relationship till you become a priority in their life and you become a preferred supplier. And even more importantly today, you become someone that they will happily recommend. So meetings are important, but phone calls are also really important. So you'll remember at the beginning, I said that I'm going to demonstrate to you a really important skill that people overlook, which is the classic, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. Now, when you tell them what you told them, you don't want to list out the thousands of things that you might have included in this. But I do say something along the lines of this. Oh, sorry, that's just flicked up like that. Recap, in summary, to conclude, you can introduce it anyway. Meetings are your speaking training ground. Use them. Use the low-risk internal meetings to practice presentations, to practice standing up, to practice delivering a really good opinion, view, or report. Be prepared and participate in every meeting you're in. Make sure that people know you want to be there and this is a priority. Make sure you've done all your action points. Make sure that you have prepared everything you need to come along. Make sure you've figured out what questions they might ask. Again, online meetings, remember those etiquettes, those do's and those don'ts. And then practice and prepare your Q&A. Have a list of them. You might not cover them in the meeting, but be ready to answer any questions. And in fact, if you're in a team meeting regularly, perhaps you can practice some of those Q&A scenarios. If you're finding that your team are not participating and they're not answering questions well, start saying, this isn't going to work with our clients. I want you to practice. So at the end of every weekly team meeting, I'm going to have a question for each of you, and each of you are going to practice answering it really well. Practice, practice, practice. You can show so much confidence and competence and professionalism by answering questions well. And then develop your client relationships through the meetings, through the phone calls, through being prepared, involving them. If you want to know more, I've organized something for you this time, which is a 50% discount on the e-publish version. That's similar to Kindle, where it's an electronic version, but for those that don't have Kindle Amazon, then this is a great alternative. It's via my publisher's Indie Expert site. That information is on the bottom of your worksheets. Next webinar, everybody, just putting it in your calendars now, is the networking events on the 11th of September. So please mark that down if this is something that you find that you loathe going to, or that your team is not making the most of. They're just going together and talking to each other, having a drink and coming back again, and they're not finding new contacts. They're not developing client relationships at events when you take them out to dinner or a function. Another idea for you is that on my website, speechmarks.co.nz, I've got a free public speaking top tips. So just go onto the landing page. It's up the top of the website. Please, by all means, print that off and use it. So now we've got time. We're going to go to Slido, and we're going to ask you to put some questions in Slido. I'll go back to taking that off the screen, and I think Jenny is going to facilitate some questions if there is some.
Right, thank you very much, Diana. I'm just looking at Slido now. And there don't appear to be any questions that have come through.
Okay. I would say, well, if there's anything else that's important to people and they want me to work into the last webinar, I'm happy to do that. So you can put that on Slido, or you can email me directly, or Jenny, of course, will take some feedback. And I'm happy to incorporate that in our last webinar on the 11th of September.
Great. Well, thank you, Diana. And once again to our attendees online, if you go through today, if some other sort of questions pop up and you think, oh, gee, I wish I'd asked Diana for those, please flick those through to me, jenny@surveyspatialnz.org, and I will forward them on to Diana on your behalf so that she can answer them for you. So once again, everybody, thank you very much for your time today. And yeah, like I said, any questions, please just flick them through to me. And we look forward to hopefully having you on our next webinar with Diana on the 11th of September. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Jenny.